Sunrise over the Parthenon, marble glowing gold against the sky, the most celebrated building in the Western world. Yet this monument to beauty, philosophy, and democracy was paid for with money meant to build warships, money collected from cities that had little choice but to pay. Can the highest culture rest on the spoils of empire? After the Persian Wars, Greece had won. The Persian threat receded, but the alliance built to fight it did not dissolve. Allied cities kept sending tribute year after year, originally to fund a common navy. Their treasury sat first on the island of Delos. Then Athens moved it home behind her own walls. The fighting had paused, but the money kept flowing, and whoever controlled that money controlled the future of Greece. Athens had become not just the leader of an alliance, but the head of an empire. The tribute of dozens of cities now answered to one city. Enter Pericles. His vision was audacious: transform Athens into the most beautiful city in Greece, an imperial capital worthy of its power. He gathered the finest minds, the sculptor Phidias, the architects Etinus and Callicrates, and he made a choice. The tribute that allies paid for warships and defense would instead raise temples. Here was the fork in the road. One path, more triremes, more soldiers, more war. The other path, larger and gleaming, marble, gold, and sacred architecture. Pericles chose the temples. This single decision is the hinge of the whole story, and it was deeply controversial. This was no single building. It was a system across the whole region of Attica. The Acropolis crowned the city with the Parthenon. At Cape Sunion, on a cliff above the sea, rose a temple to Poseidon, god of the ocean. At Rhamnus, a temple to Nemesis, goddess of divine retribution. At Eleusis, the great sanctuary of Demeter and Persephone, home of the secret Eleusinian mysteries. Notice how many cluster along the coast. Athens was a city of the sea, and her sacred geography faced the water. There was something defiant in all this. After the Persians burned the temples of Athens, the Greeks had sworn a solemn oath: leave the ruins as charred wreckage, an eternal reminder of barbarian sacrilege. Athens broke that oath. Instead of preserving the scars, she cleared the rubble and built anew, more magnificently than before. On the burned foundations of the old Acropolis rose the Parthenon, dedicated to Athena Parthenos, Athena the Maiden. From destruction, Athens manufactured glory. The ruins of war became the platform for the most ambitious temple the Greek world had ever seen. Look closely, and the Parthenon hides a secret. It appears to be perfect rectangles and straight lines, the very image of geometric order. But almost none of its lines are actually straight. The floor swells upward in a gentle dome. The columns lean slightly inward and bulge subtly in the middle. The corner columns sit closer to their neighbors and are slightly thicker. Every one of these distortions corrects an optical illusion. A truly straight temple looks sagging and lifeless to the human eye. These curves make the marble seem to breathe, to float, lighter than air. Engineered imperfection creates the impression of perfection. Not everyone was dazzled. Aristocratic opponents attacked Pericles in the assembly. He was, they charged, decking out the city like a vain woman, draping her in precious stones at the expense of the allies. Stolen money, spent on vanity. Pericles' reply was a masterpiece of political logic. The money, he argued, belonged to those who received it, not those who gave it, so long as Athens delivered the protection she promised. The tribute was a fee for security. What Athens did with the surplus was her own affair. The Parthenon was never just a temple, it was a treasury. Tribute was stored inside, under the goddess's own guard, and the goddess herself embodied the fusion of beauty and war finance. Phidias built a towering statue, nearly 40 feet tall, Athena Parthenos. Her face and hands were carved from gleaming ivory. Her armor and robes were sheathed in pure gold, over 1,000 pounds of it. Here is the genius and the cynicism. Those gold sheets were deliberately removable. In a desperate emergency, The gold could be stripped from the goddess and melted into coin to fund the war. Beauty and bullion, sacred image and strategic reserve were built into the very same object. The reserve wore the face of a god. Around this goddess grew a civic cult that bound the whole city together. Their calendar even named a month for it, Hekatombion, the month when 100 are sacrificed. On the great festival day, 100 oxen were led up to the Acropolis and offered to Athena. The smoke of the burning sides rose over the city in clouds. Religion here was not quiet contemplation. It was public, communal, expensive, and bound tight to the identity and the power of Athens itself. The climax came every 4 years in the great Panathinaike procession. The entire population streamed up to the goddess, resident foreigners, common laborers, all aristocrats, all together. At the heart of it, a new robe, a peplos, woven over an entire year by select young girls of the city, embroidered for Athena. And here is the most extraordinary image of the Golden Age. Because Athens was a city of the sea, the peplos was not simply carried, it was hoisted as a sail. A ship mounted on wheels rolled through the streets, mast raised, the sacred robe billowing from the yardarm as its sail. Athena, the warrior maiden, paraded through her city as the protector of naval power. Religion and empire fused into a single rolling image. This was the summit, the golden age that Pericles called the school of Greece. In its shadow grew philosophy, the tragedies of Sophocles, the comedies of Aristophanes, the foundations of so much we still inherit. It is tempting to imagine this flowering as pure intellect, thinkers in marble halls reasoning their way to greatness. It was not. It was the fruit of victory in war, of imperial wealth extracted from subject cities, of a population that sacrificed enormously and deferred its own rewards to raise these stones. Return now to the Parthenon at sunrise. The marble still gleams. The beauty is still real, but you see it differently now. Behind every column stands a warship that was never built, and a tribute that someone else was made to pay. The highest culture grew here from blood and from tribute.